I gathered in His name. He has promised to be there to set their hearts aflame. And right now I sense the nearness of His presence in our midst. What a privilege to feel His presence, and oh, how sweet it is. So sweet is the Spirit when it moves among His people. Hearts are melted, lives are changed, and dreams restored. He brings healing for every heartache. He has a promise for every problem. Just so sweet is the Spirit of the Lord.
There you go. There you go. Hi, guys. Good evening. Good evening. It is a Sunday evening and the first day of the week. And once again, we have gathered together for our regular appointment, our weekly dose of inspiration, our weekly dose of encouragement, our weekly dose of being challenged, our weekly dose of being uplifted, and of course, our weekly dose of grace. I don't know about you, but somebody shared this with me the other day, and I thought I agree that our weeks are actually so much better because we start our weeks with Grace Talks. In fact, on Tuesday, a certain young lady was very upset with me because she thought I had skipped Grace Talks, and it was Tuesday, a public holiday. So it is Sunday here, and I see everybody's already doing it. Welcome to Grace Talks. My name is Beauty Kotela. I have the privilege and the pleasure of hosting the show. I'm going to be with you for the next hour and a half. And as we do it here on Grace Talks, we greet in style. So there we go. That is how we greet, all right? The Kimberly is in the house, so the Northern Cape has checked in. And I see somebody from the Somerset West, Zandi. She's here for restoration. So please, guys, let's do the usual. Please tell us where you are joining us from. Please greet us, and tell us where you are greeting us from. So we have Somerset West is in the house. DR is in the house. There we go. Botswana is here. All right. Lebu is here representing all of Botswana. She's here. She's in the house. So that's the first thing that we do. The other thing that we do, and I see some people are doing it. There we go. We have Nobukosi Mafu joining us from Johannesburg. All right. Dr. Mali Swelindao, she's here joining us from Cape Town. Johannesburg in the house. And let's see what's this. Sis Lou joining us from KZN. So, sawubona, Sis Lulu. And there's my Chichi who thought Sunday was Tuesday. Welcome, Chichi. It is Sunday Grace Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Here we go. Wow, we have Dispatch in the house tonight. Umdaka Blakey, my elder over here, is here with us, joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, my brother. And then that's the first thing we do. We tell where we are from. The other thing is when you suspect, and I can promise you, tonight is going to be great. Tonight's going to be a blessing. Tonight's going to be uplifting. And we say here at Grace Talks, sharing is caring. Please go and call another person that you know is going to benefit from this program. So I see people already doing that. I see Matabo is calling Tabi. She's saying, Tabi, dear Ukokai, or whatever, something like that. Where are you? We're calling each other here. There we go. Tembeka is being called. So please, let's tag our friends, those people that we believe that are going to be blessed by tonight's program. Please quickly go and tag them. And then While we are busy tagging and while we are busy, what is the right word? Checking in from our various locations, I also just want to remind you of who we are. All right, we are the Theater of Grace, and the program is called Grace Talks. And the Theater of Grace is actually a women empowerment program of the Real Village. And the Real Village is a South African, but a Pan-Africanist NGO or community development organization whose mission is the reconstruction and empowerment of Africa through love. And we are not ashamed that the love we are talking about here is God, where he refers to himself and says God is love. That's who we are. As the Real Village. So the Theater of Grace is the women empowerment wing of that. And there at the Theater of Grace, we have what we call Grace Talks. All right. If you are joining us via YouTube, all right, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will see there, if you have been watching us from the word go, you will remember. I mean, we did not even start in May last year. We started, I don't know, late last year, but we didn't start in May. But in a year, we've reached 1,000, over 1,100 subscriptions on YouTube, and that's because of you. Now, the beauty of that, when you do that, you actually allow us to spread the message of grace. Here at Grace Talks, here at the Theater of Grace, we want to make grace viral. There are so many things going out there, going viral. Grace must also go viral. So if you're on YouTube, you have not subscribed, just hit the subscribe button. If you want, you can even click the reminder. So when we are live, it will send a reminder to your phone. So that's the first thing. I will talk to you later about the book Theater of Grace. I see some people are also in here now, calling each other. There we go, there we go, there we go. East London is in the house. Ulati is here. Bisho is in the house. We also have Khini is here. Is it called Khini or is it called Makanda? We've got somebody here. And we have Audadwetu here. She's home. She's home at this time. Thank you so much for being here, my sister. And. All right, guys, I'm not the one that is going to be talking tonight. I'm not the one about whom this program of tonight is all about. I'm going to bring on the screen now our guest for tonight. I'm going to bring her on to our screen, our guest for tonight. And tonight, let me just welcome Litas. Oh, my friend, thank you for joining us from Lusigisigi. I pray that the network keeps you on here so that we don't want you to miss out. All right. Okay, let's bring our guest in. There she is, our guest for tonight. Her name is Dr. I'm very deliberate, all right, and you will understand why. Her name is Dr. Mercy Manyema or Manyema. She's going to tell us a little bit about that. Now, I'm not going to do a bio of Mercy because we are basically talking about Mercy tonight. In fact, the two of us were talking about this. We're actually talking about God's grace in Mercy's life up to the point where she is now. So tonight's program, yes, the canvas upon which we are going to paint is the life of Mercy Manyema. But please do not miss this, that the core of tonight's conversation is about God's grace, all right? It's about God's mercy. It's about God's kindness. She uses the word providence when we were talking. She says, I want to put the word providence somewhere. So we're going to talk about God tonight because, by the way, it is his grace. But we do that through the life of Mercy. And I promise you, it's going to be very inspiring. So if you have a dream, if you've got something that you're working towards, tonight is actually your opportunity for you to pay attention. All right, Sissy, thank you so much for joining us. Now, before I let Mercy greet, let me tell you how I've gotten to know Mercy. I have not met Mercy in person. I met her at the Theater of Grace, all right? If you don't know the Theater of Grace, please, you can find us on Facebook. We've got a Theater of Grace, the page. We've also got the Theater of Grace, the community. Now, in the community, there's a lot of things going on there. Please go in and find us there. When we met, she was not Dr. Mercy. And this is what makes tonight so special, that the Theater of Grace is a conglomerate of women from all walks of life, young and old, educated and uneducated, businessmen and working women and professional women and teachers and etc. etc. And we've just gotten close, gotten to talk because I love the way she thinks. And of course, I realized that she's actually very disciplined, and that is why we are here tonight. And so late last year, Mercy actually, was it early this year, Mercy? It was late last year. She actually
December last
graduated
year.
December. Yes, we had a beautiful time where she actually graduated her PhD. Now, prior to that, there had been prayer requests. Please pray for me to do this for my thesis, this and that and that and that. And we prayed, and God has answered such that we are here now. This young lady has got her red gown. She's now officially Dr. Mercy Manyema. My friend, thank you so much. And congratulations once again. And tonight we are here to find out all about it, but not just up to the PhD. We want to go back. But let you greet the sisters first.
Thank you so much, Sis Beauty, and thank you for everybody who has joined us here. Like Sis Beauty said, this story really is about what God can do. And if you miss everything else, I would really love for everybody to go away and just be like, wow, but God, really, that's my desire. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm also absolutely looking forward to this. All right, guys, we're going to start now. And as usual, if there is, I love this comment by Sis Luz. Hey, Doc, hanging around with excellence. That's it. That's the spirit. And that's the whole idea, by the way. Best lives, best work, best relationships, best work, and of course, a best life. Okay, now before I start with Mercy, I want to just remind everybody, if she says something that resonates with you, you can put it in the comments below so that somebody else can also remember that. But also when you write it down, you also get to remember it as well. Sis, I want to start from the beginning, because you were not born Dr. Mercy, were you even Mercy Manyema? So take us all the way back to childhood, and that's what we want to do here. We just want to trace your footsteps. Where did it all begin? But before you do that, I want you to tell us about your PhD. All right, I know it's with Wits, and it's a PhD in public health, but just tell us a little bit about your PhD, what you were looking at, and then take us to the beginning, where it all began.
All right, so I did my PhD with Wits School of Public Health. I started in 2016. That's when I started the process of the proposal and everything. And what I was looking at was how the environment that a child grows up in can affect their health when they're older. So there's a group of people that have been studied since like 1990. They were born in 1990. It's what they call a birth cohort. So they've been followed up. Even now, they're still following them up. So we have all their birth data, their parent data, what kind of socioeconomic status they had. And then they were also asked questions about whether they were abused in the house, were they neglected, did they grow up with an uncle or a dad who was an alcohol abuser? Was there somebody in the house with a mental illness? Did they ever witness their caregivers fighting, domestic violence? Did they ever, was anybody in the house ever in trouble with the law, going to jail, in and out, that sort of thing? And then we looked at how that can impact a person's mental health, especially. And in short, what we did find was that the environment is very important, especially things like domestic violence, mental illness in the home, alcohol and drug abuse. So children who are exposed to that kind of environment are more likely to get to have mental health problems when they are like my age. Or even older, or even like 22, which was what I studied, the young adults. So in summary, I'm summarizing like 200 pages.
Yes.
In summary, the take home was the environment that a child grows up in is so important. It's more important even than the material things that we can provide for our children, because that molds who they can become later in life. Yeah, so that was the PhD.
I want to just come in here and say that, because that's very important. I don't want to talk about your PhD, but for the academics among us, or those of us that actually want the information, am I correct to say that it is then your thesis is in the library at Wits, is found in the Wits library? Yeah, so people can actually access that and be able to read more, because I think it's very, very important. And maybe we need a grace talk. I think Ulatelo might like this. Maybe we need a grace talk on that. You know, how the environment now, the current environment affects the mental health of the children later on, and we can look at recommendations and stuff like that. Maybe, what do you say, Lati? Maybe we need that. But for now, we're not going to go into that. But I just thought we must just highlight your study, because it itself was very, very, very important. And how have you, sorry now, this is me now getting carried away, because in your study, you now as a Christian studying that, were you able to make any links between the theoretical, seemingly academic, and of course what you know from the spiritual realm?
For me, the thing that stuck out the most was Deuteronomy chapter 6. You know, when God is giving them the commandments, and then he says, teach them to your children when you lie down, when you're walking, when you're working, you know. So God was concerned about how children were raised, whatever you're doing. So, and the assumption in Deuteronomy 6 is that you're not working outside the home. So your children are with you when you're sleeping, they're with you. When you're working, they're with you. When you're going to the temple, they're with you. And so in all those places, there's an there's an environment around the children. That is a verse that just kept coming to my mind. That so God has designed the family to be the place where we are prepared for the world. So fun fact, this is not my original thought. I heard it from another child development expert. He says human beings, out of all of God's creatures, we're the ones who keep our children the longest with us. Like, where have you seen an elephant with an 18-year-old?
Or a 33-year-old?
Or lions. When a lion is able to mate, it's already a problem with the father, and they can't stay in the same pride. They need to go away. But for us, we have, and 18 is an age that we have put probably up to about 23, 24, 25. We have that, because to God it was important that we pour everything into our children that they need when they become adults.
Wow. This grace talk is starting to become hot already. Help us, Lord, help us. Okay, let's go back to you. Let's go back to Mercy. Who's Mercy? Where were you born? What kind of upbringing did you have? The family, within the family, are you the only one? Parents and everything. Just take us and put us there in that little girl's life.
Okay, so I was born at a small clinic in a place called Chihota in Zimbabwe. And that was my maternal grandmother's home where she was born. That's where my mother gave birth to me. But I actually grew up in a place called Gutu, which is in Masvingo province. Excuse me, that's where I grew up. My parents they separated as soon as I was born, or just before. So they were not together. And I was raised by my mother's parents. That's where I grew up. So if you can please show us that first picture. Okay. I think I must have been about 8 years old in that picture. I was standing there with my grandmother. My uncle had come to visit, and he's the one who loved taking pictures and stuff. And so I don't know who said, let's take pictures. So my grandmother was just like, go and change your dress. So I went and I changed my dress. And if you look closely at it, you can see that my hair is not even combed, and the dust is all the way from my toes up to my mouth. So that was me with my grandmother. I think I was 7 or 8. I'm not sure.
Wow.
And that was one of the most prized possessions in the house, that radio. It still works.
What is that?
It still works. Yes, so it could catch radio. We could listen to local radio. We could listen to BBC News, and it had a gramophone as well. Wow. So that was a prime pose, you know. So that's where I grew up. I spent the first 10 years of my life there with my grandparents.
Mm.
My so my childhood was very colorful. And I don't know if we have enough time for all that there. All I
Mm.
can say is it was not, when I had my children, it's not the environment that I would have said, I wish my kids can grow up the way I did.
Mm.
We were not poor because my grandfather was like the village head.
Okay.
So in comparison to the people there, we were quite okay.
Mm.
Excuse me, but there was a lot of things that were happening in there. My grandfather had trouble with alcohol. He drank quite a lot.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and it was it was not always the mood was not always happy in the
Mm.
house. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
But what I want to highlight here is the strength that my grandmother had.
Mm.
She was a really strong woman,
Mm.
and I'm gonna link that to, you know, like a touch point,
Mm.
just in a bit. And I just want to say here, and I don't say this to paint my parents black, or anybody else for that matter, but in
Mm.
those days, a child who was taken to the grandparents, it was almost out of the way, kind of out of
Mm.
sight. That was the perception. So even if the parents didn't mean it that way, the community always looked at a child who was raised by grandparents as
Hey.
unwanted. It
Yeah.
means one of your parents didn't want you. If you
Mm.
lived with your father's parents, it means your mother didn't want you. She left you somewhere and your father couldn't cope, so he brought you here. Or your father wants to get on with his life, or your mother, and
Mm.
their life has no space for you. So you
Mm.
must live with your. So this is the kind of talk you kind of heard in the village when
Mm.
you're walking around. In Shona, you were called Mwana Asna Baba. Usually,
Wow.
the kids would go to live with their mother's parents. Mwana Asna Baba literally means a fatherless child. And that means your
Mm.
father doesn't want you.
Wow.
They don't want you.
Wow.
And you know, a simple thing like you're sitting in class and they're doing the register. They used to do at the beginning of every grade, right? And they're taking your history, your parents' details and stuff. And I had to go to my grandmother and say, okay, tell me my father's name. I never met him at this time. Tell me my
Mm.
father's name. And I would
Mm.
write it down. And tell me what work does he do? Because that's what they ask for. And mind you,
Mm.
this is after they've called out the register. And they say, Messi, what does your mother do? She's a teacher. What does your father do? What
Mm.
is his name? I don't know.
Oh,
What does
wow.
he do? I don't know. And then I'll go home and ask my
Mm.
grandmother. After like grade four-ish, I knew I had to keep the information. So I asked for his name. What does he do? Where does he live? And
Okay.
then I would go back to the teacher and proudly say, my father's name is so and so. This is the job that he does. But there's this thing now that surrounds you,
Mm.
that you're
Mm.
here. Your father is way over there. Your mother
Mm.
is way over there. There were jokes about kids who were raised by grandparents. For example, if you're sitting around a fire and there's something going on with the firewood there, right? And it gets smoky. And you know, smoke will go in the direction of the wind, right?
Yeah.
But it
Mm.
was always a running joke that if the smoke comes in your direction, it means you were raised by your grandparents or you are being raised by your grandparents. And that was
Wow.
not a compliment.
Mm.
So this was,
Mm. Wow.
and as a child, you don't know what you're carrying. You only realize it later. You only realize it later.
Mm.
But what I want to say about that era is that my grandmother was such a rock, and
Mm.
even in that
Mm.
time, she knew how to celebrate the things that I could do. I
Mm.
I never struggled at school.
Mm.
That was one thing. I mean, they could say everything else, but I
Yeah.
never struggled at school. I was
Mm.
often the first one or the second one, or I would actually get people bullying me
Mm.
because they couldn't beat me.
Mm.
Um, And my grandmother always celebrated that. If I came home with a prize at the end of the year, she always celebrated it. So as a child, I didn't know, but it gave me a sense of I can do something.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it kept me going. It kept
Yeah.
me going.
Yeah.
And when I look back at it now, these are the lessons that,
Mm.
I mean, you look at that picture with dust all the way up to my neck, and you
Mm.
put it next to the one with the red gown.
Okay.
And you say, Mercy, how did you do that? I
Let
didn't.
me bring that one. Let
Mm.
me bring that other one. Let me bring, because this is a
Oh,
huge
the red
moment.
one.
Yeah. Let me also share that one. I'm not trying to share
Yeah.
screen, because this is a huge moment. Now, Mercy, am I correct to say that your grandmother is no longer alive, right?
Yes, she passed away years ago.
Yes. So when she planted the seed that she planted, she did not, she saw something in you, or she ignited something in you, but she did not see this.
I don't think so. I
But this
don't
is
think
what
so.
she was busy creating. Do you hear what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from that dusty girl holding the gramophone to this, grace,
God,
my friend.
God is amazing. God is amazing.
Amazing grace.
And yeah,
Hmm.
and He
Wow.
can take you from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you were born and who you were born to. What were the circumstances and what did people say about you when you were growing up?
Hmm.
Some of the people that watched me grow have no
Hmm.
idea this is how far I've come. Coincidentally, the area that we grew up, Masvingo province, is kind of known for witchcraft and things around,
Okay.
and if my grandmother was alive today, she would have said, don't tell anybody. Don't
It's an
don't tell
African
anyone
thing.
that you graduated. Do not tell anyone.
Hmm.
And that was the other thing. That was the
Hmm.
environment I grew up in. It was steeped in superstition and
Hmm.
witchcraft, and you couldn't shake people's hands because they can leave something in your hands, and
Hmm.
you can't, even if a fly passes by your face, you're wondering, is this a normal fly or did somebody say this thing? Um,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
I moved past that. And what
Hmm.
really want to, so two things from here is that if you have
Hmm.
a child in your circle of influence who's not yours, but you
Hmm.
know that they've been born into a situation that is less than ideal, it doesn't take much to light that fire for them. When I was trying to think of an analogy, I say to myself, imagine that a child walks through their life holding a lamp, right? An oil lamp or like a paraffin lamp. And it needs to keep going. It's their lamp of hope of where they're going. It needs to keep going because they've been born in certain situations. It can like drain their oil so drastically. But every time somebody shows that they believe in them, they add just a little bit more to keep going.
Hmm.
Every time somebody says congratulations, well done, my grandmother would kill a chicken for me. um
Ah.
so that would add just a little bit more lamp. And I have to
Hmm.
mention also my mother's family, my uncles. My uncle would
Hmm.
bring me books. My grandfather, despite of all the problems that he had,
Hmm.
every time a friend of his came, he would bring a book, and then he would say to me, come and read to them.
Hmm.
And and I would read, and he would show off,
Oh
and
man.
that that would add just a little bit more. And
Hmm. Yeah.
actually, coincidentally, my grandfather always used to say, Mercy Uyu is going to go to university.
Oh man.
I don't know where he got that from. But he used to say she's gonna go to university. Sometimes he was even drunk when he said it.
Oh to
Um,
man.
and I don't know where he
Wonderful.
got it from, but he said it. He said it. So wherever you are, look
Hmm.
out for that child who's holding a lamp whose oil is going out. say well done. You could be at church. You know the kids that are in your Sabbath school class, and you know where they come from, you know their parents are fighting, you know they've just had a divorce. Even to just say, you look sharp today, you're adding just a little bit more. And it's like we pass them on to each other. The next person who sees them say something and adds a little bit more, because hope is what keeps you going. Hope is what gets you up in the morning. And even so, in the study that I did for my PhD, we found that even if a child goes through the worst of experiences in their life, they need just one supportive adult. One. They need to know that there is one person in my corner. It can be a teacher, it can be an elder, it can be a neighbor who says, I get you. I understand that your situation is really harsh. Would you like a muffin? Come in for a drink. Your handwriting looks really beautiful. I'm sorry. You look like you've been crying. Are you okay? And even if it's just one person, that they know, if I go to this one, I'm just going to get a little bit of comfort for my soul. They'll make it. They'll have the highest chance of making it. And the other lesson is that God is not limited by your circumstances. Remember, when you were being woven in the womb of whoever that was, a young girl who was rejected by the father, he saw you. So he's not going to be limited by that. And I'm not saying that everybody's journey takes you to a PhD, but God will take you where he wants to take you, regardless of where he has to pick you up from, because he was there when you were dropped there in any case. So don't let that limit you. Don't let that limit you. And sometimes, sometimes the dream is not in there. I mean, when I was standing in that picture, I had no idea what university was, or and God will reveal it, as it goes along. So that was basically up to about 10 years old, and then after that I moved to my father's family.
Okay, we're gonna go there. But I just, you are preaching to us already. I mean, we could stop here and say, because like you preached to us. But you know what? You've given me a fresh perspective to the whole issue of being raised by our grandmothers, because they often are the ones that take the place. And we thank God for these huge, gracious dispensers of grace called our mothers, our grandmothers, because often they step up and do what they can to raise the children. But we have never actually discussed it in the same sentence. The shame and the trauma, dare I say, and the pain of being raised by the grandmother. Because we are sitting here now at our age, and we reflect back on how God has used our grandmothers. But when you are 5 and 10 and raised by your grandmother instead of your parents, and not knowing your father, and therefore and therefore looking at your grandfather as your father, and you know the situation, with the smoke coming your direction because your father left you, at that point in time as a child, you don't necessarily see your grandmother as a conduit of grace, although she is. And I think for me, you've given us that important balance, that we thank God for our grandmothers. But truth is, they shouldn't be raising children. They've raised theirs. They shouldn't be raising those. But in Africa, it takes a whole village to raise the child. And this is where I love what you said, that the grandmothers are powered by God's grace to pick up the baton and do their best to raise us. But it helps when the community, it helps when the rest of the village, in small things like words that you were sharing with us, jumps in as well and actually help to raise that family. Sadly, though, we tend to have, and I'm talking about the community now, not so much the grandmothers. And I always challenge those of us who are here in the theater of grace. Sometimes we look at children growing up, in a less than ideal setting, in the same way that the kids at school look at each other. Smoke coming at you. Where's your father? Even as we know, in fact, especially when we know the conditions around the child. Oh, this one we have words that we come up with: illegitimate children,
Yep.
out of wedlock. We have to label somebody. You can't just be a child. You will be a child out of wedlock, or you're a child of divorces. Yeah, we have to give you a certain label. And I just want to say to us before we continue, grace. I love the oil analogy. But anyway, let's leave the childhood. You grew up a little bit, and you're gonna tell us now about moving in with your father's family. But as you do that, I want you to find. I just want to find out, because the dream of studying further, and is that what you wanted? Where you are now, the PhD or the way what you are practicing. Is that what, when you were starting to be conscious about what you want in life, is that what you wanted, or is that another story? Is there a story to that, to where you?
So when I did my undergrad, my first degree, I got married almost soon after, and then so with my husband, I remember us sitting and talking about goals. I think it was after like a family life thing, and we were sitting about talking about what are our goals in 5 years, in 10 years time, kind of thing. And we both had said by the time we are this age, I think it was like 35. By the time we are 35, we want to have a master's, each of us. So that's where it started. But even when I said I wanted a master's, I was not thinking PhD. And the undergrad I did, and where I am now, the thing they have in common is that it's in the health field. but they're quite different. So moving in with my dad, one of the things that happened there is that, so my father was raised in a very traditional home, and his father had 2 wives. There were many of them, and his father didn't believe in sending girls to school. So in the end, it was him that went the furthest in school. His eldest brother went as far as he could, but then he had to start working to look after everybody else. So he didn't go, but he got the opportunity to go as far as he could, and his sisters helped to look after him. And I think somewhere along the line, he decided that he was not going to follow his father's ideology that girls don't go to school. And as soon as I moved in with him, what I sensed was that here we work at school because it's important for you, and you can go as far as you want. And he sent me, so this is a village girl, nah? I the first time I was in a city and saw like a light bulb, I was in grade 3. And then I went back to my grandmother. And then the next time I saw a light bulb was when I went to live with my dad. So I'm in Shona, in Zimbabwe, we call it SRB, strong rural background. Very strong.
Oh Lord, SRB.
I remember I moved when I was going to grade 6. I was 11. And we had like, reading oral thing with the teacher. And I read very well. I read very, very well. And the teacher said to me, Mercy, your reading is brilliant, but you need to work on your accent.
You are an SRB. You have an SRB.
I was, like the determined, aghast kind of.
Yes.
And yeah. So this is where you see this accent, this is where it started, because I had to learn, to say bird and
instead of bed.
Instead of bed.
The background. Oh Lord, I can relate. I can just relate.
But my dad, that was not an issue for my dad. He sent me there to learn with the white kids. I sat there next to the white kids. And for me, it was just like, okay, so I can do this. And I think God did this on purpose for me, because I was going through such a lot already. And I moved into this new school. The class had about 20 kids. The first term, I was top of the class.
Wow.
I just, when I look back at it now, I think God just made sure that's not something I had to worry about.
Yeah.
I had other things, when you grow up with a less than ideal situation, there are certain things you can't talk about with your friends.
Yeah.
When they talk about their mom and dad, and when I moved in with my dad, he was a single parent. So everybody else is talking about my dad did this and then my mom did this. I can't. And they're saying, and then my 8th birthday party, and then we did this and this. And I'm thinking, do you know where I was when I was 7? I can't even explain it to you. You won't get it. So
Oh, Lord.
you then tend, and then that's the other thing, you then tend to be unnaturally reserved.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you just can't join
You
in
got
with
nothing to
certain
share.
things. Yeah. I
Or
can't.
you make up the story, you lie so that you can fit
Yeah.
in that mold.
Yes. So that was the end of primary school and then high school. And then I think one of the best decisions that my father made, which I believe was inspired, was then to send me to a Christian high school. The first 2 years I went to a government school, and then he sent me to a Christian high school. It's called Midlands Christian College in Gweru. It was the best environment for me, for this girl, right, who is still ashamed of where she came from. There's still a lot of things she can't talk about in her childhood. And there were other things as well in this new family that I was in that I couldn't really talk about with other people. And then I went into this environment of teachers who were just incredibly loving. I have never seen Christianity in shoes like that. I
Wow.
don't know now, but the people who were there then, they were amazing. And I don't know, I mean, obviously they would have known my history, that she lives with her dad only and that sort of thing. But they were just, I mean, we had devotions at the beginning of class, real meaningful stuff that you have.
Wow.
My dad put me in boarding. We had devotion every morning, devotion every evening. And that's where I first learned about quiet time, and that Jesus is actually personal. He can listen to you specifically and answer your specific prayers. That's where I learned all that. It wasn't an Adventist school. It was non-denominational, but they were brilliant. That environment, it helped me to be comfortable with who I was.
Amen.
That
And that was
this is
important for
me.
you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I wasn't completely. I started to be like, okay, so this is Mercy. So this is who I am. They encouraged my skills. I enjoyed reading. I enjoyed writing. So I used to enter all these competitions. My teachers would be like, Mercy, I think you would do good in this. So I would enter. I won a couple of them. And again, that was like, okay, so you can do something. I mean, yeah, you were at some point labeled as something else, but you can you
Amen.
can do this. Yeah, you can do this. And again, that speaks to, you know what? I wish there were more, and I say that even about myself, more Christians whose Christianity can just show itself like that.
Experience.
And
Yeah.
they never tried to convert me to Pentecostalism or whatever church they went to. No, they just showed me that Jesus loves you and you are enough the way you are.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned to really pray. That's where I learned to really pray. Those guys really cared about us as their pupils. They cared about us. I remember one teacher when I was 17, and we did goal setting again, and she said, in 10 years time you're going to be 27. Where do you want to be? And I remember sitting and really thinking about it, and saying, I want to have a degree and I want to marry a Christian husband. And she said, start praying about it.
Mm.
She said, start praying about it now. And I did. I did.
Mm.
And I believe that God answered it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I had, I kind of knew what I was doing, but not really. You only realize when you're 27, you're like, how? Kanji,
Yeah.
that's what that teacher was trying to do. To kind of, um, and I also want to appreciate my dad that so he was an Adventist at some stage, and then he left. But he
Okay.
would not allow me to sleep in on a Saturday. Uh,
Wow.
I can tell you that there were several days that I went to the doctor and I wasn't sick because he said, why did you not go to church? And I would say, I have a headache. Then you say, okay, but I'll take you to the doctor.
Uh,
And he would take me to the doctor and then he would drive me to church.
oh, wow. Thank you, Lord. Thank
So
God for
what he
fathers.
did, and I think he realized that there was something lacking that he couldn't give me. And what he did is he surrounded me with a Christian community. And
Amen.
I think there was a lady that he worked with from church. I think he must have told her, because I'm telling you, Beauty, these women were like, they were, like a chicken and her chicks.
Yeah.
They literally just became, if I missed church, I knew I needed an explanation the next Sabbath. Mercy, where were you? We didn't see you last Sabbath. We didn't see you. Why did you not come? And I could lie again and say I was sick. And then they would say, okay, are you okay now? Next week, we want to see you, please. don't be doing this thing.
Oh,
So
man.
there's another village right there. And I'm pretty
Yeah.
convinced that my father spoke to this woman and said, listen, my daughter doesn't have female role models right now. So they took me in as their own. And
Yeah.
when we got married, I got married in that same town that I grew up in when I was in high school. These women said to me, you're not getting a caterer. There is no way you're going to spend money on a caterer. We're going to cook for you for free. And
Yeah.
they cooked
Wow.
for me. They were up until 5 a.m. cooking for my wedding. That blew me away. That
Yeah.
really blew me away. And even now, when I see them, I never my Manyema to them. I'm
Yeah.
still always like, Mercy, how are you? How are you
Yeah.
doing? How is your family? Because they carried me from way back. And the
Yeah.
thing is the same in our church communities. Do you see that child? Do you see
Yeah.
them? And is there something you can pour into their lives? You don't need to go with them to their house. You don't need to give them money. It can
Yeah.
just be, you came to church
Yeah.
today. I noticed you. I saw you.
Yeah.
You didn't come to church. I noticed. Where
Yeah.
were you? And I was concerned.
Yeah.
Um, and so that what that did was to begin to say, I belong somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
And
belong.
and
So
and
some of
yeah. And I wanted to add to that. That is particularly important for those children whose family members are not in the church.
yes,
It
yeah,
really, guys, it is actually a life and death situation.
yeah,
It's a life and death situation. It's a life and death situation. There are many young people that walk into the church and for some reason, and I'm not judging anyone, I'm just making that as an observation. For some reason, nobody notices them. They come 3, 4, 5 times, and nobody
yeah,
notices them. Nobody, and in their interpretation is simply that nobody cares, and then they stop
yes,
coming.
yeah,
And when they stop coming here, they don't stay at home, but they go somewhere else. But there are many a story like yours, Miss. And in fact, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, of course, I can find so much of my own life in the whole what is it, RBA,
SRB.
SRB. I'm such a SRB, strong rural background. But I don't want to let on that. But I want to let on the fact that the flip side, guys, is amazing. Many of us stand here today, and Mercy is there now because somebody took the time They may not even given you anything, but they took the time to care. They took the time to notice you. Oh, you were not here last week. I mean, I can tell similar stories for me of people from my own church. When I came non-Adventist, I stumbled across the church and I'm here. And those people, those mummies did not know who they were actually nurturing. They were just serving a child of God. So I cannot say this enough, guys. Let's just ask God on a daily basis, especially in settings like churches. And I have no time to talk about teachers. I have no time to talk about teachers. Those of us who are in the teaching space, Zandile, and many others who are in the teaching space, we have got direct contact with 30, 40 young people at a given time in a given day. The responsibility that is yours. You are human, you will mess it up. But if you allow God to use you, you have no idea what you're actually participating in. I just thought I'd throw that in. Look at those teachers, my friend. Look at where you are now. And at that time, that's not what they were working. They were caring for those mamas were caring for this beautiful girl. And look at what contribution they, I think I'm stumbling over my words. I've made this point. Yeah, okay. So we can continue. We can continue. So we've now sort of you finished high school, and in this process you've gotten married as well. Which is lucky. Oh, I wanted to also just stop to honor your father. You know how because fathers are big. Fathers are big in children's lives. Fathers are big in their daughter's lives. Mothers, obviously, but fathers are big. And I just want us to stop and honor him. And I just laugh. Somebody else identified with that. About the whole issue of Adventist parents and dads, yes, but sometimes it's Adventist parents, mothers and fathers who will make sure push their children to go just because they know what's out there. So I want to just honor him as we continue. So finished high school, and of course went to college. At some point you gotten married, and the decision, most of us, certainly in the African context, what you want is you want to get a tertiary education, and then you get your qualification, your degree, and you get a job, and you work, and you feed yourself, and you feed your family. Often it stops there. Now, I imagine that you did that, but the decision to continue to study further, what led you to do that? And then I think I'm going to come in later again to just now lessons learned in the pursuit of the PhD. But we'll pick that up. Was it a smooth transition? But let's take this first one.
I think let me start by summarizing. Like I said, what got me to start doing a master's was that we sat down and we set some goals, and they were family goals that we were doing. Like I said, it was after we had done a family life program, and so when you sit down and you write what you're dreaming of, what you want to do, what that does is that any opportunity that pops up in the horizon, you're quick to notice it. Yeah. Because you're looking for it. It's like when you start looking for a car, right? If you start looking for a Qashqai, all of a sudden on the road you can see the Qashqais. Previously they didn't matter because you were not looking for them. Yeah. So the first opportunity came when I was in Zimbabwe. I saw this master's in epidemiology, and I'd been working in a research lab. My first degree was as a medical lab scientist. Okay. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I love science and investigating stuff. And then I went to a research lab. So I decided, let me do epidemiology. And the fact that we had sat down and said, we want to do this, when I saw the advert in the paper, then I applied. I mean, I had seen other adverts before, and it had nothing to do with me. But so it's important to set goals. And I still do that even now. I mean, I'm not always as consistent as I want to, but it's important. What's in your vision? Where do you want to get to? And I think now it's even more important for me because I'm 43 this year. And there's a kind of realization when you approach the 40s that you've climbed up right? And now we're kind of
Yeah.
yeah. So you wanna, there's something I really want to do, you want to do it. So
Mm.
when you, for me, when I write it down, it stays in my mind. I can even
Yeah.
write like a shopping list. If I'm going
Mm.
shopping, I'll write down a whole list of like 20 things and forget that list at home. But when I
But
go to
you
the shops,
remember.
I'll, yeah,
Mm.
because I put it
Wow.
down, put it down.
Mm.
Yeah. And what I've realized now is, you know, when God says He created us in His image,
Mm.
part of that is creativity and,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
the desire to make something, the desire to
Create.
to create. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's important for us to honor that capacity. So when you have
Yeah.
a dream, give it a
Mm.
place, give it a special place, write
Mm.
it down and hold it
Mm.
in
Mm.
with respect. This
Mm.
is an expression of God's image.
Mm.
And
Mm. Wow.
many times we ignore. And
Mm.
I'll tell you why. So when I had my daughter, my first child in 2003,
Mm. Mm.
I didn't want to go back to work. And and so we were thinking about, okay, what else can I do? Can I start a business? Can I work part-time? Not really with this kind of job. And I toyed with the idea of doing something else. One of the
Mm.
things that came to my mind was counseling. I don't
Mm.
even know why. If you ask
Mm.
me now why, I don't know. But I looked at a course that was offered by a local place. Um, I think it was called Connect at that time. And they were offering a 3-month counseling course, and then you could become a counselor. And I liked it.
Mm.
Something drew me to it,
Mm.
and I ignored it. I ignored it completely
Mm.
um, until today.
Yeah.
That's like that's like almost 20 years later. But let me start moving towards that. So I did the first degree, did the master's, and then
Mm.
I moved to South Africa. And I believe by God's providence, I could not get a job in lab science. I could not.
Mm.
I
Mm.
tried everything. I
Yeah.
jumped through loops. I went under
Mm.
rocks to get registered. I just couldn't.
Mm.
Until my husband said to me, you know what? You have small kids, so let you stay at home, look after the children, and then after a couple of years, we'll see what we'll do.
Mm.
When both my kids entered into school, then I was like, okay, how do I get back in? I
Mm.
saw another course in epidemiology. I'm like, I enjoyed this. Let's do it. I did it.
Mm. Mm.
And that's how I ended up at Wits. So
Okay.
then
Okay.
I started working for this unit at Wits called Priceless. They're
Mm.
the guys who, you know, the sugar tax, the tax on
Okay.
sugar
Yes.
drinks.
Yes. Mm.
um, that I was part of that team doing the models and everything. So
Mm.
already now, because I was now exposed to this and that whole environment.
Mm.
Um, and you know what? I had tried to apply for this master's before at
Yeah.
WITS, this one that I did at WITS, and they
Mm.
refused.
Mm.
But just when my kids went into school and I
Now we're
applied,
ready. Uh,
they took it.
Romans 8,
Yeah,
28.
God. Yeah.
All things.
So
Mm.
I went into Priceless, and so I was doing all these models, and we were publishing papers.
Mm.
And because I was in the academic environment, I started to say I could actually do my PhD. Yeah, why
Mm.
not? I
Mm.
could do it. And
Mm.
everybody said to me, you've already published papers with this sugar tax thing. Why don't you do this?
Mm.
But my heart just was not settled with that. It's
Mm.
not something I would have wanted to do for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. So I
Yeah.
said no. And everybody was disappointed. And just at that time, I met this lady called Professor Linda Richter, right? And
Mm.
she has a fellowship, a PhD fellowship. I'm like, yes, I'm looking for this. They'll pay me for studying.
Mm. Mm.
I enrolled. But unfortunately, my permit was expiring at that time.
Hey.
And
Mm.
this fell through. And part of that process was that I had to go back to Zimbabwe to get a new permit. It took me 3 months
That take a while.
away
Yeah.
away from my family. That was so painful. But then I came back and there was no fellowship. And I was saying, Lord, but why would you raise my hopes like that? You know
Hey.
I want to do this. Why? And now people are saying, you see, you should have done with Priceless.
Yeah.
We told you you would be summer ways now. Now you're sitting there with no fellowship, no job, nothing. So
Hey.
I sent an email to Prof Richter and said, Prof, I'm back from Zimbabwe and I still want to do a PhD. I didn't even ask for anything. I just told her. And she said, come and see me. I went to see her. And then she said to me, listen, I have some funding available. And there's this thing that we want to do with this birth cohort. Have a look. So I had a look. I would lie. You know, when you want to do a PhD, you should have an idea of kind of what's your interest. Honestly, this was given to me. She said, have a look at this. I had never heard. So there's this thing called adverse childhood experiences, right? Like childhood adversity. I had never heard of it before. I went and read and I said, this sounds like something I could do. What I knew though was that I wanted to do something I can put my name on for the rest of my life. I don't want to just do a PhD just to get the paper.
As a title,
No. That was important for me. And so, yeah, we talked and she said, yeah, I think we can do this. Unfortunately, the first year I could not get the funding. So that was 2016. Excuse me, I had to raise that. And then for the other 3 years, I was able to get funding, which was yeah.
Yeah,
and,
I can imagine.
Yeah. And as I start to do this PhD, I'm seeing the story of my life. Because when you talk about adverse childhood experiences, you're talking about all these things that happen in a child's life. And sometimes they happen together. Like, for example, your parents can be divorced and the one you're living with is an alcohol addict. And then they remarry and they fight with your stepmother. So you witness your stepmother being beaten. And then one of them has a mental illness. And then there's somebody else who comes who abuses drugs. And so what I was studying was the more they cluster these things, the higher the risk that it will affect you when you're older. Yes, the worse the outcome. So I'm reading this and I'm like, I'm studying myself. I'm studying myself. And I always say, I think God gave me, like God didn't allow me to pick my own topic. He gave me this topic so that he could heal me.
Therapy. Directly from above. Yeah.
I started to ask myself, maybe that's why I react in that way. Maybe this is why this is such a sore point for me, because of this, and that. And eventually, I actually ended up in counseling.
Okay.
Because I said, Lord, some conversations need to be had here about what has happened to me. Some conversations need to be had. And I did have those conversations. And God was amazing in saying, you're okay, Mercy, you're okay. You're actually okay. And like I said to you, I remember thinking to myself and saying, Lord, when I'm done with this, I want to tell this story. I want to tell this story because I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I know I'm not the only one who, for you, without blaming anybody,
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just grew up in a situation that was not ideal. And
Yeah.
you might have been thinking that this is your life. It has to end there. Um, but it doesn't. That's just the thing. And so you see, I'll keep going back between the PhD and my life. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, my PhD, when I used to present, I used to sometimes call it a springboard of hope, because there's no point studying something if you
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. So the
True.
point of the
Absolutely.
study was to acknowledge, to say this thing does have an impact, but even when you're an adult, you can do something about it, and you can still live a fulfilled and joy-filled life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, and for me, I couldn't put that in my thesis, but
Of course.
the reason why you can do that is because God, because grace, because
Yeah.
grace.
Hey.
I mean, imagine if we were predestined for heaven or hell based on where we are born.
Yeah.
Like who
Imagine.
who would make it? I don't know, because I don't actually know any family that doesn't have some sort of dysfunction
Yeah.
on
True.
some level. On some
Yeah.
level. Um, and so that was the PhD. And
Yeah.
um,
I want to ask this, Messi.
mm,
You probably are going to go to it, but I think I want to put it here because it links nicely. My understanding with God, and whenever He gives us something, and I'm big on this as a proponent of education, and for those of us who are listening, here we are not profiling a PhD for its sake. Of course, we also don't want to underplay, my friend, that achievement is huge, but basically any achievement in life, any attainment that God, by hook or by crook, gives you. Yes, He has you in mind as the one that's carrying it, but He also has His name in mind.
mm,
So whether he grows your business exponentially, or whether He gives you a family, or whether He gives you children, whether He gives you, in your case, education, whatever God gives you, God uses it as a platform upon which He can stand and honor Himself, bless others. You know, He took the boat, He took their boat and stood on
yeah,
it as a platform. So I want
yeah.
you to share with us, how have you seen and how are you planning to use what God has given you, the platform of your studies, of your qualification? And I want to extend this question to the rest of us, those of us who have been blessed, and it is all of us. How are you planning and how are you using whatever God has given you now as a platform for His honor and as a platform for the betterment of people's lives? I'm already celebrating the fact that God has used and He's an amazing, yes. Sometimes I laugh and I think He's got a sense of humor to allow
It does.
do this PhD, which, by the way, He chose the topic for you. Because as you say, that's why I'm stuck, by the way. Which topic do I want to pursue? I have to make an appointment, but I must go there with some idea. I have got a number of ideas. I can't sift them. But God said to you, this is the one you must cover because I have you in mind. But can I tell you, it doesn't stop with you. So what's the way forward?
So in the like late mid last year, as I was kind of finishing up my thesis, my prayer was, Lord, okay, so my burden now, as I was doing this research, I realized that there's a lot that has already been studied and that is known. And what is lacking is, number one, the awareness, and number two, implementing some of the things that we already know. So my burden,
Yeah.
part of my burden was I want to be part of doing what we already know. There's many things that we already know. And it's amazing how, as the Adventist Church, we have a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
The whole philosophy of children's ministries, the whole philosophy of pathfinders and adventurers and ambassadors, that all has to do with creating an environment for a child mind. So
Yeah.
for me, that's a real burning passion. And the other passion is to be able to hold the hand of anyone who crosses my path, who's losing hope. For me,
Yeah.
that's a huge thing. For me, that's a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Yeah.
Um, as long as you're breathing, it means that God has kept you alive that day. And as long
Right.
as God has kept you alive, there is hope.
It's not done with you.
And if somebody needs somebody to say to them, listen, girl, you're going to make it through this. I don't know how, but you
Yeah.
will. Then
Mm.
I want to be part of that.
Mm. Yeah.
And where that has led me now is to go back to that counseling that I ignored at some stage. At some stage. So I'm going into that now.
Yeah.
I'm still not clear how, because I kept saying, Lord, I need to know, you need to show me where you want me, not where I
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a prayer request for a job that I wanted, and I even had a salary on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to be honest, I have been applying since like November last year. I've done interviews. Some of them they just don't get back to me.
Mm.
Um, some of them I'm not even called for interviews. So this
Mm.
is like in the purely public health
Yeah.
thing.
Mm.
What has opened up is the counseling, and
Yeah.
it's like wide open like this. And so it's still work in progress, and a conversation that
Yeah.
I'm still having with God to say,
Mm.
I was kind of expecting that after the PhD, I kind of get an income,
Mm. Mm.
you know,
Mm.
but that's still work in progress. But my burden is to deal with the stigma around mental health,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and especially for us Christians, that it's
Mm.
not
I know.
shameful. It's not a demon.
Mm. Mm.
Unless if you have seen that it's a demon, it's not. It's an illness. And that we should have safe spaces for people to say, I'm not okay,
Mm.
and
Mm.
not feel judged or outcast. So let me just, you see, when you say God has a sense of humor, I'm
Mm.
studying this PhD, right, about mental health.
Mm.
And after about 18 months, I start feeling like I'm not fine. I
Mm.
can't put my finger on it, but I'm not okay.
Mm.
I'm feeling incredibly overwhelmed. I'm
Mm.
feeling like I just cannot cope. I can't do this. I'm feeling less and less motivated every day. It was
Mm.
hard some mornings to get up. The thing that kept me going was my kids. I can't
Mm.
make my kids late or make them miss school. I have to go.
Mm.
There was a stage where I'm trying to write a paper, right?
Mm.
And I would sit the whole day and write one paragraph. Because
Wow.
instead of my mind focusing, my mind is going in a million different directions, and I
Mm.
just cannot bring it together. And when I went to my doctor, and my doctor
Mm.
said, Sissy,
Mm.
you're getting burned out. You need to
Mm.
slow down.
Wow. Mm.
But me, no, I'm not slowing down. I'm an eager beaver,
Yeah. You're a strong woman.
It took me another 12 months to go
Mm.
back to the doctor. And she said, she had a very stern talk with me. She said, listen here,
Mm.
you're going to end up with major depression if you don't
Mm.
do something about this. At this
Wow.
point, it's mild,
Mm.
but do something about it.
Mm. Yeah.
That's when I walked out of there. I
Mm.
went to the pharmacy. I bought the meds that she had prescribed. I took them.
Mm.
I looked
Mm.
for a counselor, and I
Mm.
went to a counselor. And I'll have to be honest, it
Mm.
was hard for me to
Yeah.
accept
Mm.
that I am
Mm.
slipping into depression. I'm a
Mm.
Christian woman. I'm an
Mm.
elder's wife.
Mm. Mm.
I
Wow.
hold office in the church board. I pray
Wow.
for people.
Mm. I'm supposed to have it together. Yeah.
And what's
Yeah.
wrong with your life? What's wrong with your life?
Mm,
You have a roof over your
mm,
head. You can even
mm,
drive. You can afford to send your kids to school. What's
mm,
wrong?
mm, mm,
Um, One of my friends, there was this particular Sabbath. I was complete. I remember that day that I felt like every time I needed to stand up, I felt like I was going to collapse. That's how
mm,
bad it went that day. And the
mm,
next day, the Sunday, she said to me, I heard you sighing, and I recognize that sigh.
mm,
I know it. I know it. Something is wrong. You don't have to tell me what's going on, but
mm,
something is wrong.
mm.
So you talk about the village. You know what,
Yeah.
ladies? Especially the strong ones. You know those
Yeah.
strong ones, the ones
Mm,
everybody calls on. They have it together.
mm.
Let's check on each other.
Yeah.
Check
Check on
on each
them.
other. If somebody has been, if they come to your mind that they've been
Mm,
quiet, I haven't seen her. She hasn't. Check on them.
mm, mm.
Check
Wow.
up on them. And I think
Mm,
my saving grace, why I didn't go as far as other people go, is that somebody said to me, there's something wrong. I took notice. The
mm,
doctor also said, girl, you better be careful.
mm.
So I took notice. And that's one way of caring, caring
Mm.
for one another,
Yeah.
caring for one
Yeah.
another. Um,
Mm.
is this where I talk about the lessons?
Yes. Okay. What I want to do now, um, because we now need to just bring it to an end.
Mm,
I don't know where time goes, but there's somebody here, one who thinks they would like, and what I love about tonight's conversation is that it's been a mix of everything that has happened in your life, and the good and the bad, and you are here because God used the good, but you are here because God also used the bad as
mm,
stepping stones to the person that
yeah.
you are. And the power of what you are sharing with us now about the mild depression is the fact that often we think that if I can only get that, if I can only achieve this, my life would be perfect. If I can only just get married, my life would be
Mm,
perfect. Or if I can only just make that six-figure income, my life would be perfect. But the truth is, we always need to be alert. Something can always go wrong. It doesn't mean that the life is to come to an end. But there's a guy on the left who comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And so ours is to stay alert. Ours is to stay alert. And I love what you're saying, that I need to stay alert for me, but we need each other. We need
yeah,
each
we
other
do.
to listen for the sigh,
We
to
do.
listen for the sign, to look out for that slight change in behavior, to realize that this guy is actually, or my sister here is actually, she, on the whole, she looks like she's fine. Just check on her. And you said something now that I've learned. Whenever God brings us somebody to your mind, just out of the blue, you remember so
Yes.
and so, and something says to you, pick up the phone and check, or even send her a message. I've learned
Yes.
to do it. And
Do it.
99% of the time when I've done it, they've needed somebody to actually
Mm,
pick up
mm,
on them. So that's very, very important what you've raised. But I want you to just now, as we are wrapping this up, speak to someone, number one, because we could make the mistake here of glamorizing this, such that somebody could say, I'm going to go and register for a PhD. Is it that easy? Is it, I mean, I know it's not easy, but I want you to just basically share with us some of the challenges and how you've been able to overcome them, some of the hurdles, the literal and the emotional hurdles. I mean, I've done two postgraduate qualification, two masters. The second one I finished by God's grace. At some point, I wasn't there. You know that thing when they say, what's that parable where he says, I carried you here. Lord, I didn't see your footsteps. And then he says to you, that's because
yeah.
that kind of thing, where did you experiencing him carrying you? So I want you to just share that. Also, speak to someone that's here, that's got a goal and a dream that they want to achieve. It doesn't have to be in the academic sphere. Somebody wants to grow their business. Somebody wants to achieve a particular something. Last week we spoke about visions. Make the vision, create the vision, and make it clear. There are people in this, and I can tell you, almost everybody that's listening to me now, we all have this thing that we want to attain. What would be your words of encouragement to them? So those two things.
I think for somebody who wants to do the PhD, if you are a believer, you look at everything through the lens of believing in God. So pray about it. Ask God to show you where to go. I know there are people who have done a PhD simply because they want that qualification, right?
Yeah.
But it makes it a lot easier to carry if, number one, it's something you enjoy, or it's something you have a passion about. So even if you walk into a fellowship that already has a topic, right, and look at that topic and make sure that it's something you can live with.
Yes.
Make sure it's something that you can do when you are dog sick. It's something that you can get up and even type even just one line on. I think that's very important. So pray to God, ask God about it. Number two, I think the supervisors is also very important. Who is your supervisor? I have to say I had the most amazing supervisors. Prof. Linda Richter was a supervisor, a mentor, a mother sometimes. She's also one of the people who said to me, Mercy, there's something wrong. Because I would tell her, I'm waking up in the middle of the night and my heart is beating fast. And she said, you're worried about something, or something is making you anxious. So she was that type of person. People that are experts in their field, look at their track record. Ask a couple of people. My other supervisor was Professor Shane Norris, who's a brilliant researcher. And I knew his track record. In fact, he's the one who was in charge of this birth cohort that we used. And I had seen his other students. So supervisors, you don't want to be supervised by people that you can't get along with. No. There will definitely be times that you won't agree. Yeah. And when you don't agree, you need the foundation that they're on my side should not be shaken.
Yeah. We just disagree.
Yeah, we are just disagreeing. We'll sort it out. And then what I learned while I was in this journey, and I spoke to several people who completely agree that what you attain when you're doing a PhD is a qualification, but also a whole lot of self-awareness.
Yes. All right.
Because I'm telling you, when you write a chapter, right? You write a whole 30 pages and you pour your heart into it, and it comes back from the reviewer or the supervisor. And you can't see what you wrote because it's all red. Oh. And you need to be able to pick yourself up again and say, okay, I didn't express myself clearly.
Because your ego takes a big bruise.
Oh, many times.
Yeah.
And for me, I did the PhD through publication. So I wrote a thesis and then I had 3 publications, right? And so I was reviewed by my supervisors. I was reviewed by some other independent from the journals that I don't know. And you get reviewers saying, this doesn't make sense. This is not scientific. And you're like, do you know how many nights I spent putting this together? So you gain, be willing to be challenged. Be willing to let go of some things you believed in the bounds of your Christian beliefs, right? Sometimes you can think you are a brilliant writer and somebody shows you that you are not. You can think you know English very well and somebody shows you that you don't. And you need to be willing to be taught by anybody who knows more than you at that particular time. It can be somebody that you think is a subordinate or somebody who's not even thinking about doing a PhD at that time. or they're not, it's not even in their radar, but they can even teach you something. So be open to learning. To You will be criticized. You need to be able to
Yeah.
handle that well so that you
Thick
don't give up.
skin. Yeah.
Resilient,
Yeah.
persistent.
mm,
So
mm,
even when you spend a day and you write one paragraph,
mm.
there has to be something that says tomorrow we'll start again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's why I said at the beginning, it's good to do something you enjoy,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
like, or that
Mm.
makes sense to you. So if I had decided to do a PhD on evolution, for example, that would have
Mm.
ended badly because I don't believe in it. I don't. So on those days when you have zero motivation, you can just actually be reading because it's something you like.
Yeah.
Um, and leading on to having any other goal, writing it down. And I know we had a talk about this last week.
Yeah.
Mm.
Put honor your dream, your ambition. Write it down.
Mm.
Make it important enough to be put somewhere. And I think this is the concept behind vision boards.
Yeah.
And and at the beginning of every year, I learned this about 4 or so years ago.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to review the year. I used to be scared because I didn't want to see where I'd failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me. So don't be afraid to review the year and say, with regards to this business goal, what did
Mm.
I do in 2020? If it's
Mm.
nothing, it's nothing.
Mm.
And you need to
Yeah.
face up to that. If you don't
Mm.
own what is, you can't
Mm.
change it. You can't
Mm.
change what you don't name. So honor your dream and be honest. Have the courage to be honest with yourself to say, I'm not as far. Maybe
Mm.
I did one little thing. Celebrate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Celebrate that
Yeah.
and then make
Mm.
plans for the next thing. And
Mm.
I think I don't know where I can generalize this. For
Mm.
me, one of the things that used to come in my way a lot is that at the back of my mind, I don't even know that I was always conscious of it. There were limits I set for myself.
Yeah.
I would always kind of say,
Mm. Mm.
Mercy, I don't think you can get that far.
Yeah.
Almost like,
Mm.
who do you think you are? So
Mm.
sit down and think about that.
Mm.
Are there certain things that if somebody said to you, you know, you actually look like you could run a multi-million business,
Mm.
and you say,
Yeah.
ha ha ha, you're full of jokes.
Me.
Why? Why? Why do you think that's a joke?
Mm.
Because there is
Mm.
a mental block you've put for yourself.
Yeah.
And there are many of these.
Mm.
I strongly believe that they are the ones that limit us from where we can go.
Yeah.
Um, and celebrate what you have achieved. Don't minimize what you have done, because when you minimize what you've achieved, you're
Mm.
minimizing the grace of God. God has done that
And
for you and through you. Um, and above all else, you know what? As long as you're alive, there's always hope. It's never too late to start. You know, when
wow.
I graduated
Mm.
with an 87-year-old.
Wow. 87.
He walked onto the stage with a cane. He was
Ochuma.
87, graduating with his
Wow.
PhD. So it's never too late.
No,
It's
we've
never
got
too
time,
late.
guys. Wow. Look, that is a very good place to wrap it up. I'm going to let you have your closing remarks just now. But I just want to do what you were just saying, that to celebrate yourself when you have achieved something. It's time to stop and celebrate yourself, but also remembering that when we minimize these achievements, we are actually minimizing the grace that God
Mm,
gave us to achieve
yeah.
those. There's often labels that we give to some, for example, of the practices in other churches where they would have the testimony services. There are extremes, of course. I'm not talking about those extremes. But when we don't stop and share our testimonies with other people out there, one, we are minimizing what God has done in our lives. Two, we are depriving others of the inspiration that they need to be able to carry. Who knows that there is someone here in this audience or who would listen to this video who is actually Mercy, because these things can be listened to by anybody, who is actually 16 or 17 or 18. They are there where you were all those years ago. And by listening to this, they actually realize, oh wow, that song, it's no secret what God can do. And what he has done for others, he will do for you. That is why, that is why we share what we share. And the lessons that you've learned of resilience, of patience, of the ego, of being able to have your ego in check, the lessons of not giving up, the lessons of learning from being open-minded, those can be applied not just in academia, they can be applied in life in general. So for those of us who are pursuing something, lessons learned from tonight can be applied. But I must also say, this might be applicable to academia. There are those of us here who are sitting with unfinished business. Unfinished business. You registered a company, you started, but somewhere along the way you got discouraged. Somebody said something that discouraged you and you stopped. Can I tell you something? The title of tonight's session was Grace to Finish. God's grace is sufficient to help you finish what he started with you. Some of us did register for either that PhD or that master's or that diploma or that short course that would help you in your career. But somewhere along the way, you lost interest, something fizzled out. God's grace is sufficient for us to finish what he started in our lives. So I'm hoping that we will walk out of tonight's conversation empowered. So I'm hoping one day there will be doctors so-and-so because of this conversation, or a successful businesswoman or a successful person in their own lives because of the conversation we have shared tonight. So I want to just, before you go, ladies, I just want to share screen one last time. And you would already know, those of you who are part of Theatre of Grace, you will know about this. We've got this book called The Theatre of Grace. The book is basically what started the whole conversation. Now, what's important about, because I've been sharing about this book over the past few weeks, to say it's available at 110 Rand a copy, and that when you buy it, you are helping us with the work of the Real Village. But the reason now I'm mentioning this is that this is we've got our last printed copy. We've got, I think, less than 50 copies available now of the book Theatre of Grace. So if you would like a copy, you need to get hold of me ASAP so that you can get yourself a hard copy. Otherwise, we are looking at having it only as an e-copy. All right. And the contact details are at the bottom of the screen. You can just drop me a message and I will organize for you. Just want to share a couple of comments from the ladies, and then I'm gonna let you, Mercy, have your concluding remarks, and then you can close for us with prayer. But let me make an announcement. Next Sunday is Mother's Day. We have a special program here on Grace Talks for Mother's Day. We've got a special program for Mother's Day. The title, I won't tell you who's going to be there, but I promise you, you don't want to miss it. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And but the title is Dear Mama. So next Sunday on Grace Talks, we're going to be saying, some of you know the song, Dear Mama. So join us for next Sunday talk. We're doing a Mother's Day program. All right, just a couple of comments from Mutuli. Thanks, Doc, for sharing your journey with us. I'm really motivated. Sis Lulu saying, Ish, the way I hate the red pen, those remarks all over the pages. I know you can turn and stop. You can go and deregister when you're reading those things, like, who to tell me all of this. The one supervisor, he was a guy from Free State University. Apparently I was using a particular author a lot. He says, Beauty, one of the problems that you have fallen in love. I can't remember who the author was. You have fallen in love with this guy. Stop, there are other men out there. It's very funny. Anyway, so Sisulu says, you end up changing everything. And I remember telling my supervisor that my voice had gotten swallowed up and none of what ended up being approved was mine. That is a whole nother conversation. So true. All right. Mam Dambo saying, thank you, Tariq, as the doc. Thank you, Ma. Lati, thank you. Doc, it's not late at all. You know, this whole commenting on the 87-year-old, God's timing, not ours. Thank you for sharing beautiful testimony, powerful conclusion, says Angeline, and self-limiting, and etc. etc. Ladies, you are free to help to let the conversation continue. Mercy, my friend, we celebrate you here at the Theatre of Grace as your community. We celebrate you because just like it takes a village to raise a child, but when that child succeeds, the village gets encouraged, the village gets inspired, and many more people actually find the courage in them to succeed. So thank you so much, and we thank God for giving you the grace to finish. And may He, and I have a sense that He will finish what He started. That Romans 8:28 topic of yours, God has got something prepared for you to do exactly that which He actually appointed you for. So thank you so much, and I do want to honor your family as well, for allowing you to spend this time with us, and I'm sure for being there for you, being present for you as you were going through this very, very difficult journey. And I'm going to allow you now to do your closing remarks and then leave us with a word of prayer.
All right. I think what I would say in closing, I would repeat what I said earlier, that God is not limited by your circumstances. He transcends time and space and history, and He can do it. If He can do it for me, He can do it for you. I also want to say, be that voice of hope to somebody. Be that voice of hope to someone. You won't have to look very hard or very far to see someone who just needs a little push, a little nudge, a little comforting. So be that voice for someone else. Be a dispenser of grace as well. And you can be a dispenser of grace even while you're receiving from God.
Yes.
While you yourself are crying, you can still dispense grace to somebody else.
Amen.
And that the journey is never over. I mean, you would think after getting a PhD, I'm not touching another book again, but well, that's not my story. I think that might be somebody else's. I know, I'm not done. And until in Shona we say kuzorora kufa, you rest in the grave. And as long as you're alive, God has something for you to do.
You rest in the grave.
For you to do. Yeah, you rest in the grave. You rest in the grave. And finally,
I need someone to type that phrase in Shona, because we must use it. Angeline, can you type that phrase? Yeah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. I'm not going to practice yet during the people, but I will at some point. Someone please help us. I see Angeline's there. She should be able to type it. Please, I need that Shona phrase that says you'll rest when you are dead. Okay, sorry, I was now.
And lastly, I just want to say, and this is one of the things that I speak quite a lot about now, is that so when I'm being introduced with my husband, it's now Mr. and Dr. Manyema.
Doctor.
But that doesn't take anything away from him.
No.
He's still my husband. That doesn't make me husband. He's still the head of my home. And so his support has been immense, and that it takes nothing away from a man to support his wife's dreams. It takes nothing away from you.
Hey.
Yeah, it doesn't change who you are.
Big one. That's a big one. Okay, I think let's if you are finished, let's close. You start something just as we close.
Starting another one.
But I'm gonna resist the temptation to go there. The temptation to go there. But here's the phrase, ladies. Kujorora kufa. We rest in the grave. Let's go there and grind. You know, His grace is sufficient to help us to give our best work, our absolute best work. Sissy, let's pray and let everybody go home.
Let me pray. Yes, let us pray. Our Father, we thank you for this conversation that we have had. And my prayer is that only you will be remembered, and what you can do, and your grace and your love that is completely immeasurable. I thank you that you have deposited potential in everyone, every single person, no matter where they were born or how and in what circumstances. Every single one of us has potential. And help us, those who can see, to fan that potential in another person, in another child, for your glory. May you be with everybody who was here today and bless our week. We pray for your grace. We pray for your spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Have a blessed week, everybody.
Thank you.